You're watching ChillyBoy Productions. I'm Larry Chi ChillyBoy Chilson, and this is our Pride Month review for To Wong Foo. Thanks for everything, Julie Newmar. Now, before we get into this review, make sure to go ahead and click that subscribe button down below so that you can chill with me on each and every one of my upcoming videos, including all of my Pride Month reviews of queer cinema throughout the month of June. Now, we are back with my friend, my dear friend, Ren, for our annual drag film review to kick off Pride Month. Hi, Ren.
Hi, Larry. I'm very excited
Welcome.
to do To Wong Foo. We've
Yes.
been on the list for a
Ooh, go
very
ahead.
long time, but we just haven't quite gotten to it.
This is my first repeat review, I'd say, for this series. Now, before I decided Ren in this first week was going to be like the exclusive big drag opening, the first year I kind of got a lot of the big ones out of the way. And Chu Wong Fu was one of them, was someone who had never seen it before, one of my older friends on YouTube. So it was like a first introduction. We both looked a little bit crazy in that review as well. So I thought it's time. It's been
It's
years and
it's worth a
years.
re-record.
It's worth a re-record with Ren, and I think we're gonna do the same probably if Ren is down, maybe next year
With
with
Priscilla, Queen of the
Priscilla.
Desert.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with Priscilla. Although that one was a little bit less crazy, and it was with a friend who
Yeah.
introduced me to the
I
film, so that's good. But
I feel like Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and To Wong Foo are like companion pieces,
yeah,
international companion pieces. They came out basically at the same time. Priscilla came out right while To Wong Foo was being produced. They
yeah,
were like working on filming it. So it was an accident that there were these two road trip drag queen films,
yeah.
but they're very different and also very similar. That combined sort of usher in this new era of drag fascination. I think To Wong Foo and Priscilla Queen of the Desert, those probably have had some of the like imprinting sort of factors on me as a child. Like I vividly remember seeing To Wong Foo, and it was like, I don't know if I've ever talked about this before on CinemaSnarks or anything, but when I was a kid, my parents would rent movies, and then I would wake up for Friday night movies. I would wake up on Saturday morning and then I would go downstairs and I would rewatch whatever movie we had watched the night before. And I'm pretty sure that I watched To Wong Foo like 4 times before we actually returned it. I loved it so much. It's
Ah,
everything that I adore. It's theatrical and campy and ridiculous. And there's just like fabulousness everywhere. I think this movie helped to identify that spark within myself. I think it was there, but it made me go,
yeah.
oh, look at this a little inside of myself. So it was really fun to revisit, regardless of the fact that it is certainly very of the time that it was made, which we can talk about.
Yeah, so this was 1995, directed by Beebon Kidron. So it's directed by a
Lady
female.
director. Also, fun fact, she was pregnant while they were doing the movie, and Steven Spielberg was like, if you're getting really pregnant, I can always like take over for you. And she was like, no. And she finished it because she's a badass.
Yes, it is produced by Amblin, which is obviously Steven Spielberg's production company. So good on you as well, Steven Spielberg, for producing this film, helping it get made, providing the funds for it, and taking a chance. Also, good on you to these three straight actors. I know that's like maybe a hot button topic now, but once again, this is like not the first, but
Yeah.
one of the very first mainstream queer movies in general that
Yeah.
went this big. And
Yes.
for sure, one of our first big instances in the United States of drag queens
Yeah.
taking the spotlight.
And I
And these are
think,
people who were at like either the prime, they were huge. Patrick Swayze
yeah.
was huge. It wasn't like this is his first role, he was an unknown. No, he was already really famous and took this role.
And the role was actually specifically written of Chi was written for with John Leguizamo in mind. And Wesley Snipes was already like pre-cast, but they had a lot of different people that they thought about for Miss Vita. And apparently, Patrick Swayze got the role because he brought in his own makeup people to make him look like a woman. And he has a dancer's background. And so he told the director they were going to go on a walk together and he was going to prove that he could pass as a woman. And that's what they did with his lovely command of his body, which I think that is definitely one of the things in this movie that is really interesting is I think a lot of them do a really good job of incorporating these more feminine mannerisms and characteristics for actors who are not normally
Yeah.
necessarily particularly feminine in anything that they do. Going back to this, like it was huge. I think the fact that it was able to bring queerness into the mainstream movie world is largely due to the fact they did have these big
Yeah.
actors. So, I mean, it's if you would have cast real queer actors that well, would have had a hard time in 1995, 94 finding queer actors
Out queer
out,
actors.
yeah, and willing to say that they were gay and or a drag queen
Yeah.
for this film. So, we're gonna look at this in the context of the time period that it was made. And realistically, it was pretty huge for the time.
And I heard Patrick Swayze also told of like how he was bullied because he was a ballet dancer as a kid. So like he identified with the story that was being
Yeah.
made here. So it's really cool to one that Patrick Swayze was auditioning for a role like this and that he got it. And like you said,
He
Wesley
wasn't just
Snipes
auditioning, he was gunning for this
gunning
role.
right on the cusp. He was getting huge as well. Wesley Snipes, obviously, 90s was his time. He went on to be the iconic Blade that we all know and love. John Leguizamo needed a bounce back after Super Mario, but but he got it with Chi-Chi. And I love particularly with John how much he still looks back on this character with so much love. One, he's just a really amazing person, like John Leguizamo. If you listen to anything about him, he's amazing. He talked about like his whole process with Chi-Chi being that she was gonna start with a really pale face because his aunts, like the colorism within the Latino community has always been there, the racism. So they kind of paint a shade or two lighter than the rest of their skin. So that was his approach to Chi-Chi.
There's a little joke about it at the end.
And then he progressed. He was like, and then when she kind of self-realizes and becomes who she should be, that's when she'll become the proper shade in her face as well. But he talks very lovingly about this character. But it's just great that they got these actors and were able to tell this story on the level they did. So it's basically a drag queen road trip movie. These three queens, two of the three get picked to go to this competition in California. So they have to make a cross-country trip when they run across little Chi-Chi, who's sad and in the dumps. So they take her under their wing and bring her along. Hence, they have to do a road trip because they only won two airline tickets. But along the way, they break down and get stuck in this little podunk town full of people who have not quite experienced the world, and they help to open all of their eyes to a whole new world. So, Ren, you told about your first experience with To Wong Foo, how much you loved it as a kid. Going back and rewatching it, what are your thoughts on the film?
Still really like it. Now that I'm older and we live in a different time, there's certainly aspects of it that are just like I think the main issue with it is that there's a clear misunderstanding. I don't know if it's a misunderstanding or what it is, but like these people are either trans or they're very strange drag queens who voluntarily wear drag all the time. I think that's probably the weirdest
Yeah,
part about it. I think if you were to redo it, you could have solved it with something along the lines of like they were in drag for some reason when they first arrived, and then they had to stay in drag so that no one in this small podunk town figured out that they
yeah.
were actually
Yeah.
men wearing women's clothes, gay men wearing women's clothes.
Because I understand why you want them in drag the whole movie because it makes it more fun. Like it makes
Sure,
the
yeah,
the
it's way
farce,
more fun. They're
it's way more fun.
costumes, yes.
But just
But
logically, I don't
yeah.
know. I don't know a drag queen that would cross the country in full drag the entire way. It's not comfortable, y'all. Drag is not comfortable. It's cute. You go out, you do your performance, but please.
So that's the core weird thing about
Yeah.
it. But I don't know, there isn't a whole lot else that like bothers me. There's
Yeah.
definitely there's like intentional racism
Yes.
stuff and
Yeah.
that's there. There's also just like stuff that's like like Wesley Snipes' character, Nagzima can be a little bit like also at the same time, I don't think it's like fully inaccurate to the
No.
drag queen culture.
No.
Like those like no-nos, those taboos, they're like all about it, right? Go to a Bianca Del Rio show and so the jokes from like that perspective of like that kind of being like the drag tradition are really not that off-putting or that much of a problem, but it is a little weird. You've got racism in a small town and a weird bigoted dullard. I love the dullard thing. I just think it's really funny. Sheriff Dullard,
He's
Chris Penn.
definitely like having a his own crisis by the end of the movie, where he's like sitting there just describing in great detail these
Yes.
masculine,
Yes.
hairy,
Yes.
deep-voiced men cuddling up on each other.
Yeah. You've got the little bit of the like domestic violence, but I
Yeah.
don't think they make it so yeah, a killer, right? It's not like you're in
Yeah.
this silly movie and then you're suddenly thrust into this terrifying domestic violence situation. It's also not treated
As a
with
yeah,
silliness
yeah, no.
either. It's treated as the like bullshit that it is. And I think it's not a particularly complex film, but I think
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
I think its sweetness is part of like what makes it fun, and what makes it accessible for a wider
Yeah.
audience, especially like for at the time that it came out. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I just the costumes are always just incredible. All of
They look
the
great. Look, those girls, they look great going across the country. All their
Yeah, they
different
look
little
fantastic. And I
the
love that they all
casuals
have a
even look
very
great.
different type of fashion, right? Like Vita is very old Hollywood glam.
Classic.
Then you have Noxzema, who's very urban. 90s urban, I would say, is for sure the
Athletic as
like,
well. She's got like a little bit of an athletic, like some of those
yes.
tight dresses.
Yeah, right. There's a scene where she's literally playing basketball with the women's basketball
Wow.
team.
See, that's
And
those are the
then
parts I do love that they're in drag. And this man is like, oh yeah, the women's basketball league is
Yeah.
here
Okay. So,
already.
and like that kind of makes sense a little bit. Like, okay, they showed up in a costume, in their
Yeah,
costume. So then they have to continue to wear it so they can
yeah,
blend it, right? In Some Like It Hot, there's a reason that they have to stay in their drag the whole time. And like in The Birdcage, there's a reason that Nathan Lane's character
yeah,
is in drag for this whole time. But anyway, the costumes are fantastic. I love all the styles. Chi-Chi's style is kind of like baby doll cutesy. It feels very like Baby Spice almost,
yeah.
right? Her little frilly panties and her little like baby doll dress. I remember when I was a kid thinking Cheetah was so beautiful. And now I'm a little older. I'm like, oh, it's definitely like a drag queen. I can see it. But like when I was like a little girl, I would thought Cheetah was one of the most beautiful women I'd ever seen.
Which,
So
this Podunk Town boy also thought,
yes.
Chi
Yeah,
Chi was the
watching it now, I'm
cutest
like,
thing
how is
ever.
he not nothing?
Not to, body shame anybody, but Wesley Snipes and Patrick Swayze are big men.
Yes.
They are large, they are muscular. At least John was small, like me, like five, like a
Yeah.
Latino usually is, like 5'5", 5'6", you're not too built. So you're like, okay, maybe. But Wesley Snipes his arms and has them out the whole movie too. Like there's no dress to like cover them at least. No, broad
There's
shoulders. It's
like if you watch drag movies, right? Like if you've seen any of the like more recent ones, they're so silly and they're so campy that they're
yeah,
never trying to convince you that you should believe that this is really a woman
yeah.
or it's like part of the joke here or there, but like this movie it's in a weird space
It's in a
between
weird, yeah.
realism and camp and silliness where I'm supposed to believe that everyone around them genuinely can't see that they are men.
Except
So
one
that's
woman.
weird.
One woman clocks up. She
Yes,
notices the
noted
Adam apple.
only because of the Adam's apple. That's the only little
I mean,
clue.
I do love like the little nods of like, oh, there's something we got to tell you. Vita works out. She works out a lot. She'll be fine against that man, I promise. Or like these random other moments. Yeah, I think what saves the film, it's just really funny.
Yeah,
It's
I
just
think you just
really
gotta suspend your
fun.
disbelief and like roll with it, and then it's fun.
I mean, it has some of the most really iconic lines. I just live for like, why is this little Latin boy in drag crying? Like Noxima has some of my favorite. I love Noxima. I think she's hilarious in the whole movie. I think Chi-Chi's also hilarious in most of the movie. When she starts reading Vita down, it goes a little low blow, but when she starts reading, I live. And like you said, it's a lot of really good banter. I also love that they feminize themselves without going like too stereotypical. Like it's just like a nice light voice for Patrick Swayze,
Yeah.
and all of them do that with their voice and their like femininity, but it never feels like they're mocking it. And I think that's what really works about their performances. They are into character without kind of making fun of these characters. They are like creating these people, and I think it works really well.
Yeah. And as a, coming at it from the drag versus trans perspective, the makeup for the most part is really very not drag. It's very natural.
Noxima girl, you
But
needed more makeup. We needed about a pound more makeup on your face, Miss Noxima.
yeah.
West, I felt I think Vita
I
had
even, well,
enough,
at least
but
like
she
when
needed more.
Naxima's in that first scene, she's got the like glittery spider
Yeah.
eyelashes. Like I'm like, okay, those are fun, those are glam, those are ridiculous. But like, I'm to believe that Patrick Swayze wins the like drag competition in New York City looking like he's just trying to pass. And that's
Like
just like,
a
that's
beautiful
not
conversation woman.
artistry.
We have to give it up though for Mother herself, Miss RuPaul, as Rachel Tensions coming down in a
Confederate
Confederate
dress,
flag
iconic.
gown. It is so good. That drag name also is so good. Rachel Tensions. I mean, that's amazing. RuPaul, she was pretty iconic with her little cameos, like here, and then, but I'm a cheerleader, being the straight converted teacher. Amazing. We have other icons. Obviously, Miss Julie Newmar herself makes a cameo, which would have been very disappointing if we didn't get Miss Catwoman in here. Did you know
So
who Julie
this is my
Newmar
one
was?
thing I decided after having watched this again.
Okay.
I find it a little, so I loved it again as a child. I was like, yay, Chi-Chi's so pretty. Chi-Chi should win. But now, like as an adult, having like watched this whole movie, I'm like, no, Vita is the queen. Vita is the one who
Yeah.
like insists on kindness. Vita is the one who's like, we're going to enjoy this. Vita is the one who should have been the winner at the very end. I just feel like, the payoff should have been for the person who I felt like deserved it. Like, I think Cheetah grew a lot, but like, just doesn't quite sit right with me that like the one who didn't actually win the competition in New York went to the like national competition and then like beat everyone.
I do love that last look, though, I have to say.
I mean, it's gorgeous. Like,
I
no,
live for
like
that last
Cheetah is
that
beautiful.
gown.
I
But
think
no,
Cheetah, as I've said, serves
I
like
think
fish the best.
I think that they definitely were like character arc wise. Maybe they felt like Vita got her moment in the town, so they're like, we still need to give Chi Chi some kind of moment. But really, Noxima doesn't get that big of a moment either. So it could have even been maybe Noxima getting some. Yeah, I think it's like Chi Chi goes through a character development because she's literally catfishing people, y'all. So she has a villain edit for a good part of this movie. Chi-Chi is kind
Yeah.
of our villain. She's a brat. She's out here like
Yeah,
making all
she's
kind
kind
of mess
of
to these.
terrible. There's a part of me that's bothered by the fact that, like, oh, you get rewarded for being the shittiest person at the beginning, so that your journey is so far
Yeah.
to being just like a not shitty human being.
She is a brat the whole road trip, and she
Yeah.
catfishes this boy in this town, steals
And
this
then
young girl's little
when Vita
crush.
tries to be like, you cannot, that's absolutely unethical. You cannot, not besides the fact that this other little girl who's clearly more age and not lying to him
Yes.
appropriate and lives here in this town is also in love with him. You are lying about it. And she's like a total asshole
It's
about
like,
it.
no, get out of my business. That's why you're a queen, because you couldn't cut it as a man, so you threw on a wig. it's wild. These boys in this town are just wild in general because I don't know. Them little white boys who come at Noxima at the beginning, I'm like, even if this was a biological woman, do you see her? And you think that you little scrawny ass white boy should be stepping up to her talking that crazy?
The makeup of the town is a little bit strange, right? It's like they literally have like all the women of the like generation ahead of time, they all had boys, and then like that's it. There's like one girl in the like 20 something range. So it's just like this gang of boys that are ready to like gang rape the first like slightly slutty woman who shows up in their town. That's also like watching it again as an adult, being like, man, this is like fucked up.
This is wild.
They like that is literally the setup is that
I
they
mean,
were about to like
that's another thing that both this and Priscilla have in common is kind of the young, hot, bratty one decides to go out on the town in a cute outfit and almost gets like gang raped and beat up. Even though, Guy Pearce actually gets beat up in that film. This one, Chi Chi escapes because old boy has a crush on her and she jumps in the truck. I love how his like idea of romance is vandalism. He like gets the
I mean,
spray
that's
can.
cute. So I found out that there was supposed to be a scene that happened in a McDonald's, and McDonald's was like, we don't want to be associated with a big drag queen film. And Coca-Cola was like, we'll take it. And
Yeah.
that's part of why they're featured very prominently in the scene where it's like, love that, not Coke, Chi Chi.
Yeah, good for you, Coke. Good for you. But I love the overall message of acceptance. It's just a
Yes.
big movie about acceptance and owning who you are, coming into your own. All these
Yeah.
women in this town come into their own, particularly the main woman that we follow with Miss Vita, who is being domestically abused throughout the film. Also
Dr. Channing.
has a great arc, Dr. Channing. She has a great arc in the film and also is just kind of, grounds it. I also love the running gag with the grandma, the like old woman who
The
that nobody
who
thinks talks.
Yes. I also think there's a great theme of like kindness breeds kindness
Yeah.
in it too. So the idea for the movie came about because the screenwriter had heard this, he had seen this like anti-gay propaganda film that like had these like drag queens coming through a town, and the insinuation was that like they'll come through your town and they'll change everything. And he was like, well, wouldn't that be fun? And I love that as a concept of like that's the basic conceit of the entire movie is like, what if a bunch of drag queens came into your town and fixed it and made it better and just like we're drag queens about it, right? And like there is always kind of this permeating theme in drag of like accepting yourself. I think that's important for the
Yeah.
non-gays and the non-drag queens to hear sometimes. Frequently, drag queen, queer people in general have a much more rough, clear cut journey straight through it real hard, and then they
Yeah.
have to get onto the other side of it. Whereas, like normies, putting that into quotations, they can spend a lot of their lives just like not quite knowing why they don't feel like they fit in and why things
Yeah.
aren't quite right, and just kind of like letting their lives be shitty without like taking control and being like, this is who I am. Yes, I think there's plenty that we can learn from the
Oh
drag
yeah.
queens, and this movie shows it.
Yeah, and I think that's a big reason this particular film has kind of stood the test as one of the still most iconic, most beloved drag films, one of the most beloved queer films, I'd say, of all time. One of the most famous ones. If you've seen any amount of queer cinema, usually To Wong Foo is on the list of the movies you've watched. It's one of the more ubiquitous films in the community. And I think it's because it has those timeless messages that kids now still go through. People now still have to deal with self-acceptance, self-love. The jokes, more or less, are still funny and fun.
I
The
laughed.
the story is simple enough that it's pretty universal across different generations as well. And rewatching it, especially a lot of the rhetoric from the cop, unfortunately, is still somewhat a lot of the rhetoric we're hearing out of Florida, out of other places in the United States
Yeah.
right now as they try to repeal drag rights, ban drag from this space, that space. We're hearing a lot of pervert. We're hearing a lot of this, a lot of that
Yeah.
danger. So it's like, unfortunately, we have come a long way in
30
so many
years down the
respects.
line.
we got gay marriage and people were, celebrating. Oh my gosh, we're finally there. And just like that, it's already like people
Oh,
repealing.
there's always like a rubber band snapback thing. I think it's two steps forward, one step back. So I think we're still like, want to be the optimist here. I think it is
Yeah.
definitely better than it was.
Oh, for
Like,
sure.
I think To Wong Foo is a movie that would be fantastic for a remake. I think
I
it
agree.
would, and I'm not a fan of like, let's remake everything, but I think To Wong Foo absolutely has so much that's like in there at its core that's really good. And that if you
Yeah.
updated it for a 2024 audience, it would do really, really well. Like if you had real drag queens and you had real
And now you
trans
could do that. Yeah.
people, there's a kind of a weird space between drag queen and trans for some people. And
Yeah,
so
there's
finding some
trans
of
drag
those,
queens.
yeah, there's trans drag queens. I think
And
there's certainly a lot more real people. So many performers at this point have run through Drag Race. I don't even know how many seasons there are at this point. You
plenty
should
of
have your pick.
plenty of trans drag queens have come through. We have a winner now, a trans winner of Drag Race, two of them, I think, actually, at this point. It's funny you mentioned that. John Leguizamo himself did an interview about the film just a couple of years ago. I think it was like 2020-ish, somewhere in there. Don't quote me. But it was sometime recently where he talked about, remaking the film, and if you were to remake it now, that he really feels that Chi-Chi should be played by a Latina trans woman.
It does
But
seem to be that vibe for Chi Chi. There does seem to
I
be,
think you could add a lot of subtext, a lot deeper
yeah. I
subtext to the
think I would
character.
buy the other two as just drag queens,
Mhm.
whereas it does seem like Chi Chi is trying to live in a woman's body,
Yeah,
is
it feels
trying
that
to
way for
like,
sure. And then
yeah.
it would make her storyline, I guess, and you can still have a conflict there of like deceit or whatever if you want to. That I mean, there still can be all of that intrinsically
But in
with the
that
character.
case, you could even like, because we live in 2024, I think you might be able to like actually play it through and maybe he isn't automatically rejected. She doesn't automatically pull herself out of the running because she's able to say, I'm trans,
Yeah.
but this is my truth. And, a sweet country boy might be okay with that. Well, are you still
I
who
think
you
it would
say
be
are on the inside
lovely.
and the outside, whatever.
It's kind of what we get with, again, I know I'm comparing it a lot, but the films are very
Priscilla.
similar in a way. So something we get in Priscilla is
Yeah.
they have a trans character in that film that is a drag queen. So and she's trans the whole movie, Terrence Stamp's character, and she finds a man. She gets a
Mhm.
man in the end who knows who she is, knows her story, and he loves her and like cherishes her. And I
Yeah.
think that could be a great story for the character of Chi-Chi as well, is they find out and they're like, all right, I'm down with it. Honestly, in 2024, you can even keep Chi-Chi a drag queen and do the whole some like it hot route where they're like, ooh, I got something to tell you. And they're like, I don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, I fell in love with you regardless. I
And
don't care.
I think you could also play so much more with the sheriff character and his like I think you can really dig into that fun like homophobia really
Yeah.
being just like it's touched upon in the film, but I think you could really lean
Oh, yeah.
into he puts in so much effort to find this woman,
That Loki, he
track
loves
her
her.
down with his little Cinderella slipper.
He's more upset that she rejected him
Yeah.
than he is that she is a drag queen.
Yeah.
Let's be real. I also love that very last line from that other guy who's like, well, one thing about our forefathers is they sure had fabulous wigs. And it's such a great line.
I just really enjoy that when he tries to like, he has to go on this case to find her by himself because when he tells the other cops what happened, they just laugh at him. I like
They
that
don't
there's
care.
just this one bigoted asshole dude, and the cops otherwise are like, it doesn't even matter. They're like, it was a woman. He's like, it was a man in a dress. And they're like, that's even funnier,
They're
man.
like, sorry, you got embarrassed. That's we don't care. Also, though, what a weird thing that he just like lays there all night. Like she literally just pushed him over and he's like knocked out for the
I
whole
know that's
effing night.
a suspension of disbelief. In my memory, she punches him.
Just like pushed him off.
All she was push him, right?
And he falls
Yeah.
and
So
passes out. And Chi-Chi's old dumbass. I mean, at least you know it's her because you can't trust a damn thing she said. Like she's not very
yeah.
smart. So this one is deceased, bitch. Girl, did you just look and his eyes were closed and you decided he was dead,
But
ma'am?
also, What the hell were Noxzema and Vita doing trusting
No, it's very true.
her assessment?
Very true. I mean, they had already very much established that this girl, she wasn't playing with a full deck.
This is just like a movie conceit that always like bothers me anymore, which is because I know the fact of the matter is if you hit someone so hard they pass out, you've probably caused brain damage. And if you hit someone so hard they pass out, there's also a really good chance you did kill them. But in this case, like if this was real and he hit his head so hard he passed out overnight, the guy's just been dead, right? Like severe brain damage.
Any film, you just got to go with the pass
It's a
out
very
business.
convenient. There isn't, I was, when I was writing a book, I was like, is there a non made up way to just like very quickly, temporarily knock someone out? There isn't. Chloroform also doesn't work that way. The conceit of the plot, so that we can get through the whole story as necessary. This guy had to be knocked out, but not actually dead, so that he could then chase them down later. It's fine. It's fine.
I honestly think
Accept it.
I love the end too, obviously, with all of the different townspeople, like
Yeah.
even the men. So it's not just the women who they really kind of vibed with more, obviously, and helped come out and all this. You have these men too coming forward with their like boa. That one man talking about, I'm a drag queen. I live. And I
I
think
don't know if
we're
I
talking
quite
about,
buy how. So there's the douchey guys that are about to gang rape Chi-Chi that also then he like
well,
grabs the one's dick and forces him to be like
be
polite.
like,
And then
look at my
like by
nails.
the end of
Oh,
yeah, and then by the end of the movie, he's like a good guy and he's like putting on a nice shirt and like then like changed him for the better. I'm like, that's not how that would work. You would have bred a new enemy that hated you and was angry about it.
you would have been on the side with her husband. You would have
Yeah.
been right there with the husband, running
Yeah.
around, telling the cops. Yeah, no. That's one of the biggest leaps of disbelief is that boy right there. Maybe if he didn't try to rape somebody, I could get more on board
Yeah,
with
I
his
don't.
redemption. But once you go to that level,
I could give like this tiniest suspension of like, there's no women in this town. So maybe they think that's just how it works with a girl who's acting slutty. And that's
oh,
their misinformed idea. But I'm not going to give that much of a. All he needed was a little bit of instruction on how to be polite to women. And that was going to like
that was it.
fix that problem right away. This like roving gang of like leches in this town.
I feel like it also is ripe for remake because of that division. Now I know this is gonna make some people mad because we live in a very like black and white kind of political world. But this kind of story about drag queens, coming together with small town America folks and enlightening them, and kind of this blend and education and acceptance once again, surprisingly, here we are in 2024, it's still a message that could
Yeah.
could fit right in with
It's
today's
actually
landscape.
probably one of the most realistic parts of the
Yeah,
whole movie. That's how it always goes, right? Like the senators who oppose gay marriage until their kid was gay, right? The
yeah,
senators who were pro gay conversion therapy until their kid was gay.
yeah,
This is just how it works. It's the reason why cities are more liberal
yeah,
than non-cities.
yeah,
It's not because we're spreading evil ideas. It's because we have to live with each other. When you actually have to like interact with someone
yeah,
that is different from you, that you may otherwise have like some bigotry against, it forces you to confront that they are in fact a human being, and it really does change the perspective. So I
yeah.
agree. I think it could be a good revisit for the times.
Yeah, this one particularly. The other big drag movies of the 90s, I don't think we need to remake. Like, we don't need a new Birdcage. Leave that alone. Don't touch
Nope,
it.
that
Don't
one
touch it
is
with
a fucking masterpiece.
Don't
Don't
touch it with the
touch it.
10-foot pole. This would just be, again, it's so simple, but so fun, so funny. The most of the stuff holds up well enough that you can keep it at its core of what you want to do while just updating it to kind of reflect the times. And I think it'd be great. I think we are primed for at least another, if you don't want to remake it exactly, we're due for a new drag queen mainstream film, I feel. It's been a while. All of them have been like drag race girls just making their own movie, like Bianca Del Rio, just making her own stuff off to the side. But they're not like mainstream theatrical movies that are getting attention. I think it's time. We could do it. So So
Mhm.
somebody make a drag queen film.
Not Bianca, because as you saw, she told me to my face when she saw me acting poorly that she knew bad acting because she made Hurricane Bianca.
Well, that's the next thing is we want drag queens to take the roles like this, but also drag queens, we need you to be able to act. So I guess it'll just be Jinx Monsoon.
Yeah, I
Jinx
mean,
Monsoon will be the star.
I will say part of the problem is I'm pretty sure that Bianca is one of the better actors of them. And this is part of the other thing of having these like actors play these
Yes.
roles.
So maybe just queer people. We just put some queer folks in drag who know how to act. We have plenty of gays out there now that can just be thrown in drag. They don't necessarily have the drag queens do the makeup. That's what we need. Have the
Who would
queens
be
do makeup.
yeah, please, for the love of God, do not hire a non-drag
Whoever did
let's not have an
Ursula,
Ursula repeat,
we are
please.
not hiring you. Okay, that Little Mermaid, step to the side, please, because you are not coming onto the set.
So a To Wong Foo remake, what would be your like dream casting?
I agree with John, so I think we'll have to dig because off the top of my head, I'm not thinking of who is that fabulous woman on Pose that won the Emmy. If she is Afro Latina, let her be Chi.
India Moore was the
India
name of
Moore. You're beautiful, you're gorgeous. I think you could be around, you could do this.
Michaela J. Rodriguez.
Oh yeah, there you go. Michaela J. Rodriguez, and for sure is Latina, obviously. Yeah, put her in there. Obviously, these people had great pedigree. I heard they were great on Pose. I'm a bad queer and I've never watched it.
No, it's
Um,
not. No, Pose is bad.
oh,
It's not their fault. Pose is bad. Listen, it's not their fault. The acting is fine. The show is created by Ryan Murphy, who cannot write his way out of a paper bag.
I heard it's like most Ryan Murphy though. I heard it's good in the first. It
The
starts really
concept is
good,
good. The setup is good.
like
There's no
everything.
payoff. It's all just nonsense. It all just wanders off into
I
why
mean,
are they doing
that
that?
that's
These
Ryan Murphy. He
characters don't
starts
make any
good every
sense with
time. He starts
themselves.
good every time. Ryan Murphy, you're also not allowed on set, sir. Stay away. I know you're a queer in this space, but we don't
Not let
want you on
Ryan
this
Murphy
project.
touch To Wong Foo.
No, 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 no. And then for the man, I mean, I'm just obsessed with Jonathan Bailey right now, and he's gay. Put him in anything and everything
It
gay.
is
And then I'm trying to think of a lot of queer black men.
not a ton of them.
They
The
like
Billy Porter.
Billy, which
He's a little old. I think you need like a
I'm like Justice Smith, but I don't see him as Noxema. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to go unknown. I think we're
okay.
gonna have to go unknown
I
for
think if you get
Noxema.
like for whatever reason, Matt Bowman really like pops out in my
Oh,
mind
Matt
as
Bomer.
a
He would
Vita.
work really well. I think Matt Bomer. He also has that very strong jawline,
Yes.
like Patrick
Um,
Swayze, and could pull off a classic beauty.
yes, I think so. Yeah, the gorgeous like blue eyes. Like I think he's a
Yeah.
pretty man.
What's the actor of the man who's currently playing the doctor? What's his name? I
Oh,
forget.
oh, it's so good. It's in
Newty.
Nguati.
I think he could do it. He
He
seems
could
like
do
he
it.
could
He
be
could do it
Noxema,
actually.
and he'd be great.
But you know what? Also, let's maybe go with an unknown
Yeah, which is great
because
too.
there's not enough of them.
But yeah, the To Wong Foo, thanks for everything. Julie Newmar from 1995 to 2024 remains iconic, remains fun, funny, one of the staples in drag cinema, certainly, but also within the queer community's cinematic experiences. This is definitely one that everyone, like, when you first tell them you're like gay in part, watch movies, they're like, oh, have you seen To Wong Foo? Like, it's just like the intro. Like, oh, yeah, I have.
Yeah,
You
listen, I've
should.
seen all the drag movies, not the like bad ones, but I've seen all the big ones. If it's
Yes.
like
Yeah.
I can't keep track of all the like little tiny ones. Some of them are like really bad. They're just like not funny.
But this is definitely one that has its problems, has its confusions, but by and large is still just a really funny fun movie that has an uplifting message with some great performances from all three of our leads, as well as everybody in that town. I think is pretty good as well. Everybody does a good comedic performance from the cop, from everyone. I mean, I think it's just a good time at the
Yep.
movies. Don't think too hard about it. It's one of those. Don't think too hard and you'll have
Yeah,
a
it feels like a
blast.
solid 90s comedy film. Apparently on Rotten Tomatoes it only has like a 54% rating or something like that. I'm like, that sounds about right for a cult classic film. Like,
Like I know, but I'm a cheerleader does not have a good Rotten Tomato score either. And it's like, y'all just didn't get it. Like the 90s critics, you didn't understand.
no.
You didn't get To Wong Foo, and it's outlasted probably most of your reviews
Yeah, it
anyways.
seems
So
like generally the like distaste for it was that the like plot was too predictable.
yeah.
And I'm like, guys, we know it's fine.
It's fine. And I often say that when you're trying to break new ground, I think particularly back in this time and even the 2000s, you kind of have to go with the more generic plot. That's just how I feel. You have to have an entry point for people if you're going to be breaking big ground. Because if you go experimental or like really innovative plot and synopsis with this brand new, like groundbreaking casting or whatever the case might be, nobody's going to watch it. And what good is that really going to do other than feed your artistic fantasy, I guess? But if you want a wide stream film, make it accessible through the plot, and that's exactly what they do here. They make
It's
it
super
accessible.
accessible. Yeah.
It's yeah,
I was a I don't know, I guess in 1995 I would have been like 8 years old and I accessed it.
and loved it.
Loved
Child
it. Can
Ren
just accent
adored
like
it.
was affected by it. Like it has helped to form the person that I am today.
But yeah, I think it's a fun time. I think you can even watch it now, again, as long as you're just ready to have
Yeah.
a fun
And
time.
it's currently free on Tubi, so go
Yeah,
ahead and like just watch it because it's fun. It's a good way to
yeah.
celebrate Pride.
Exactly. It's a great Pride film for its message, for its costumes. If you want to get down with the drag culture, I think, as we said, they do a great job of emulating that drag humor and banter, relationships. It's all just a good time, which in and of itself is generally drag. Like we
Yeah.
said, this narrative of danger, this and oh, pedophile, that, whatever, that's been going hard these past few years. At the end of the day, drag queens are usually just a good time. And that's what
Facts.
this movie is, a good time. So I recommend it. Hop on Tubi, celebrate Pride Month with a fun little watch to kick things off. Especially because so much of queer cinema, not really drag cinema, but so much of queer cinema is a little bit heavier.
Yeah,
It's
this
heavy.
is one that doesn't deal as much with like life is terrible. I mean, it certainly touches on it,
Yeah.
but it focuses
Honestly,
on the joy.
honestly, the tougher part of this movie isn't really the homophobia. I mean, they poke fun at the homophobia a lot more. Like it's there, but they're like
Mhm.
the guy literally the officer has a clipboard that says place for homos, like where to find homos.
It's real.
And it's like
I love that.
flowers, the
Ballet
ballet
classes,
studios, like
antique stores, which is funny because some of them are actually like fairly accurate.
you're just like hollering. And so he goes into this place with literal children learning ballet. So it just pokes fun at that. I would say the more deep issue is the domestic abuse, but as we said, it doesn't really it touches on it enough, but doesn't linger into this like dark space of the domestic abuse to like make it this heavy watch. It's a fun time overall.
Yeah.
So we don't have a lot of those in the queer space. We have more now in the last few years, but if you're looking for a classic that will just make you laugh and smile, I say watch To Wong Foo this Pride Month. Thank you so much for joining us for this Pride review of To Wong Foo. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, click that like button down below and subscribe to the channel so that you are always up to date on all of my latest videos, including all of our Pride Month reviews. Also, thank you so much, Ren, for joining me once again. Let everyone know where they can find you.
Well, you can find me on the CinemaSnarks podcast because we do that sometimes. Check out our Challengers review.
Very
I'm
gay.
also on Twitter. You can harass me at Ren Manley, but I probably won't respond. And I'm also on Instagram at RennyPoo13.
And you can find her running her theater company at Audacious
Yes,
Theater
Audacious
across
Theater. We have
all
a
of the
murder
things.
mystery coming up. It's called An Audacious Murder. So if you're in Denver, come check it out.
Running in Pride Month, correct? June?
Yes, running during Pride Month. There's a lot of
Perfect.
gayness happening in it, but it's not like the main point of it.
What do gays love but a murder mystery?
So Rainbow Cult is also doing a screening of To Wong Foo in Denver. They do screenings of gay cult classics, but they do this all the year round. But their thing for Pride Month is going to be To Wong Foo. Thanks for everything, Julie Newmar. So you should check that out. But I did a Clue screening with them earlier this month. The gays loved it. What's not to
Always.
love about a murder mystery and, Madeline Kahn flipping out? It's just the best.
I could say if the gays love Clue and they love Miss Angela Lansbury solving mysteries. So come on. A murder mystery for Pride Month, they go together perfectly.
Perfect. Come see it.
And make sure to join in on the discussion. What do you think of To Wong Foo? Do you love it? Have you checked it out? Let us know all of your thoughts and comments, either in the comment section down below, or you can find us at all of the aforementioned social medias. I love you all so much for your continued support. Mwah. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.